very briefly, as a member of BRAZ-TESOL Brasilia chapter, I would like to introduce everyone who's here to Ilá, Janaina, and Chris. Let's begin with Professor Janaina Cardoso, who I have already had the pleasure of meeting. Janaina is an associate professor, director of the Language and Literature Institute of UERJ, right, Janaina? UERJ is the University of the Estado do Rio de Janeiro. It's Rio de Janeiro State University. She's a researcher, author of many articles and books, etc. That's Janaina. Ilá, I had the pleasure of meeting Ilá in IATEFL Brighton a few years ago. Yes, Ilá is an English teacher trainer. Now she's living and based in Munich, Germany, where she teaches English and Portuguese as a foreign language. She's a speaker also and co-author of Raise Up course book. And last but not least, Chris Richards from Spain, right? He's been working in ELT since 2015, first taught in the UK, holds a master in applied linguistics, and is currently working as a teacher mentor in Madrid. Am I right? Yes?
Yeah, that's me.
So, yes, once again, thank you very much, Janaina, Ilá, and Chris for accepting our event's invitation. Yes, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you three specialists here. And I will be asking you some questions to provoke you and and we want to know a little from you, yes, what you think about a few questions that I have written here together with some friends. To begin with, Freire would say that changing is not only necessary, but it's possible, right? So what is EFL doing to make changing possible? And what are these changes? I hope there are many, right?
Would you like to? Yeah, I mean, I can start just stating the obvious, just the fact that I remember that my first IATEFL was in 2015. And since 2015 until today, I have been attending several conferences, national in Brazil, in Britain, and all around Brazil. And I have been seeing topics being brought up that I think from 2015 on, maybe a little bit earlier. And this is already, and the presence of these topics have been increasing. I think this is a big change already. We are discussing critical pedagogy, critical thinking, inclusion, diversity, issues that weren't discussed, I think, 10 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is a big change that I can see, at least in teacher training conferences and these type of events. I don't know if Janaina and Chris agree with me, but I see this as a big change, yes.
I completely agree, okay. This year I had a plenary at the BRAZ-TESOL, Brazil-TESOL, and the plenary was very different from the other plenaries because we were talking about exactly the topic that we are doing today about decolonializing language teaching. So I think the big changes, we are discussing things that we didn't use to discuss, and I believe that this is very important for us. In education, we are closer to education than we were before. We had, at least in Brazil, we had a big division between education and languages. I work on the 11th floor, it's the language department, and the 12th is education. But we don't talk, we didn't, okay, so much. So I think the big change is that more and more we are working together, we are thinking about the process, and to have an event like this about Freire is fantastic. Okay, so I agree. I completely agree with Ilá or Ilá?
Ilá.
Ilá Coimbra.
Yeah, obviously I have to agree, well, with you both as well, but what was also going through my mind was not just the topics at conferences, not just whole web carnivals on things like Freire, race and queerness last time, but also little by little seeing these changes, you know, and obviously Ilá and James with Raise Up and but other projects as well, that the changes aren't just in conversations, they're not just in conferences, they're not academic conversations, they're actually happening in classrooms and in books. And I even saw finally something in a book that I've been waiting to see, an interracial gay couple appearing in a what it presents as an interracial gay couple appearing in a global produced textbook. I thought was, you know, we are seeing that change kind of happening now. Yeah.
And if I may add a little something to what Janaina and Chris have said, I think it's interesting to see these topics coming up more and more in times where they apparently are becoming more and more necessary, with all the governments that we have around the world, with all the attempts to destroy what Freire has done. Not only in Brazil, I think there are other places, but in Brazil there is actually a crusade against Freire nowadays, and his thoughts and the things that he stood for and stands for. So I think not only is it very important that we have been talking more and more about this, but the moment that we are, where the status quo is getting less progressive, I think it's even more important thing to mention. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
and I don't know if it's just timely or if it's just like a reaction.
That's what I was going to say. I believe when you have a moment like this, is the time that you have to be critical. It's not that you don't have another option. Okay, so I believe that is when you see what is happening and what's taking place in the world, like nowadays, like it was in the 70s. Okay, so the end of 60s and beginning of 70s. We are coming back having the same kind of problems that Freire faced as well. So I believe that he's very present, or we can still use most of his ideas, because we are still facing this kind of problems, that we are going not exactly the same way, but we are facing very similar situations.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, then. And then comes the next question, the next provocation. Freire once said, there is no neutral position. You are either on the side of the oppressor or the oppressed. What side are ELT course books on?
Ilá.
Me? Chris, that's unfair.
I was thinking how this feels very much like a Cambridge speaking part 4, where the examiner just throws questions at the poor partners, and then one of them throws one of the others under the bus and says, "Okay, Ilá, off you go."
Yeah, I think before commenting on where ELT stands or where the course book stands, one thing that I think we have to make it very clear is that everything we do, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, is taking position. So if you wake up and go down in your building and don't say good morning to the doorman, I mean, you're taking side already. If you bump into a person in the street and you don't apologize, I mean, you're taking part already. If you hear a racial slur and you keep quiet, you're taking side already. So I think this is something that actually is everything is taking side. So this is something that we have to make a stand.
Even if when you don't do something, okay, you are taking side as well. So it's when you do and when you don't do. So there is no way of being neutral. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. About the book, somebody?
Oh yeah. Well,
Yes.
yeah.
What
I
about
mean,
the
I think. Well, obviously, we can point to a recent project, can't we? That's maybe more on the side of the oppressed. But in terms of, I suppose, sort of the general publishing, well, I suppose it's are we going to position them on the side of the oppressor? I suppose we have to, by not being in that kind of defaulted way of the, well, if you're not taking the opposite position, if you're taking the position of the status quo, and if we're publishing global books for a global audience that therefore take the more conservative lines, take the path of least resistance, then then the clue is in the expression, the path of least resistance, then they are going to side on the side of the oppressor. That's kind of built in, I would say, to the model.
But I believe that, well, I'm a little bit old, maybe I'm the older here, I believe. And what I felt is a change as well in the course books, because I was comparing some English language books when I started teaching and nowadays, okay. So I noticed that all the characters in the books, they were white. They were from England or the United States. Okay, so English was English from America or from England. Okay, and when I was studying at university, we had RP, received pronunciation, that I say that not even the Queen speaks that English, but we had to study that way. And and when you look at books nowadays, at least they try to show diversity, which is something I think it's good. You show different kinds of families. For example, when you talk about family, you don't have just a kind of family. When you talk about houses, well, it depends on the book, of course, but I'm talking about in general. I think there is this, I'm going to talk about a house. It's not just one kind of house with two-story, with the car and the garage and so on and so forth. So when you do this, when they try to do this, at least, I think that we are moving, we are changing, okay?
Yeah.
So it's not much, but I believe that it's, you have, as a teacher, you can use these things, the small things, but you have these things to
I think so. I don't think
it's a door open,
the situation
right?
I don't think the situation is as bleak as it could be or has been. But I think I think my direct answer was because of the direct question. It was neither or binary.
Yes.
But it's certainly true that binaries aren't always that helpful. But yeah, and I also wanted to pick up on what you said then about language as well, and the British and American Englishes. That I've just mentioned this as well, that only this week I was teaching something from a really modern book that was sort of, the difference with American English. Here's two lists of vocabulary, match them up. And I couldn't help thinking, well, yes, but firstly, the distinctions aren't that big anyway, because flat and apartment, I say flat and apartment interchangeably. Flat is not British anymore, and apartment's no longer American. But also, and the other Englishes, like why are these the ones in the big spotlight?
Yeah, exactly.
Please,
I just finished watching because I love cooking shows, and any reality cooking show I'm crazy about. And I have just finished one that takes place in South Africa. And there's so much to explore in that English that me as a teacher, I have never seen before, let alone a student. And we are talking about South Africa. It's not a small country. So, I mean, there is a lot to explore that is not explored. I completely agree with Janaina when she mentions that there has been changes, definitely. I mean, it's cringeworthy. If we look back like 25, 30 years ago, the course was cringeworthy. We literally have the woman cleaning and the man sitting having a beer. I mean, this is literally what we have in the course books, and this has changed. The thing is, a lot still has to change. And there's still prohibited things to be talked about by course book authors, for example. The parsnips are still there. So once you determine what is allowed and what's not allowed, so you don't disturb the classroom, this disturbance or this lack of disturbance is taking sides.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
Sure, we
also
want to disturb
Chris.
And we want to open. We want to open those questions and those conversations, don't we? And it's interesting you mentioned cringeworthy about the role, sort of the gender roles.
Yeah.
In the past, but they haven't gone. They haven't gone. There are books out there now where you've got the princess and the hero.
Yeah. And women shopping for clothes, and when you have a restaurant scene, women are eating salad, for example, not a big greasy burger or something.
When I'm saying this, I'm not saying that the books are good and it's not this, but I think that we have and we should move towards those changes and much more. And I think that one thing that I miss is, and it's difficult for books as globals, is to think local. How could we think about the realities of the students, okay, and how to deal with the realities of the student, not just the realities of name and nationalities and so on, but the real realities, what they are living, suffering, dealing. And I believe I would like to see, I would say, more Black people in the books.
Absolutely.
Okay, I would like to see more Black people, like when you talk about queens and kings and so on, showing kings and queens from places that are Black, okay? I would like to see more gay families talking about their realities and having books that you could read a text about something showing that it's normal. This kind of thing we don't have. Yeah. They are still trying to do something. They are trying to show, but I believe that we still have some things missing, and it's difficult to do this. I think it's not so easy. If you think about the book, the idea of having a book for everybody, everywhere. Sorry, so go you.
No, I think you have an amazing point, and I was going towards that direction. The thing is, if we think about how Freire thought about education and how we think about education in DLT, so why are these issues not there in the course books? Because the course books have to sell. So we are thinking about education that is focused on profit, on selling. And from the moment that we are thinking about that, we are siding, not we, they are siding with the status quo, because this is the status quo of education now. I'm not talking only about TOT. I'm talking about any regular school that prepares you for an exam and not prepares you as a critical citizen, as Freire always said about consciousness. And so I think the biggest issue is that one of the biggest issues is that the books that we have to use in the classroom are commercial books. They are made to focus on the profit.
Profit, of course.
So what we have is education as product, not education as formation of critical citizens. And this is where ELT and EFL is heavily based on.
Yeah,
I think this is one crucial thing.
I also, if I can pick up on a point that Janaina just made as well, when you're talking about what you'd like to see, I also can't avoid thinking as well that it's also so much more interesting, because these quote unquote normal families, houses, whatever it might be, if they're normal, then they're not interesting anymore, are they? If they're just the identikit family, home, whatever it might be, then where's the interest for the students in that material? It's just what they already know. And we've done this a lot with teaching festivals to our young kids where I work, and just sort of abolishing the 3-week Christmas. You know, not that we haven't binned Christmas, but it doesn't need to be for as long, because they know all of the language, they know all of the traditions in Britain and America they know about Father Christmas and Santa Claus and whatever it might be. It's not interesting anymore. What other festivals are happening at this time of year? Loads. So we focus on those instead, and we learn about those, and we hear other stories, and surprisingly, the students find it really interesting, because it isn't this again, you know. And actually, with an adult student, adult group, sorry, I'd left a little window at the end of our final lesson before Christmas to do something Christmassy, and one of them rolled their eyes and was like, "But we always do something about Christmas. That's not why I'm here." And I said, "It's fair enough. We don't have to do it, but I want." Absolutely, if you would rather we didn't do this, no problem. I have a backup. But yeah, like, do we, and whether it be families or homes or festivals, like if it's just the same all the time, then it's not interesting.
Yeah, and even the topics.
Thinkers. Yeah.
Even the topics, not only like Christmas, on the time of Christmas, but every single course book has shopping.
Yes.
Has traveling, has food, as if culture was just about food.
Yes.
Right. So I think these pasteurized topics are actually, if publishers could see how much more interested students get when we change that, when we switch that, then maybe they would think twice before saying no to a topic like this. But we know that's much more than that. It's not lack of knowledge of students' interest. Is a whole industry that is behind education. Right?
Yeah. I worked with Paulo Freire's method a long time ago, and it's very hard to have the idea of Paulo Freire with a book, because it's not the point. Okay, you come from the topics, the themes would come from the students. So if you have the themes coming from the students, maybe this idea of textbooks should change. Instead of having this view that you have the text coming from the authors, the pictures coming from, everything comes from the authors, from the book. Maybe we should have a kind of guide for teachers, or something completely different, or pictures that, strange pictures that they could think about and bring some topics, because Paulo Freire's the topics would come from the group, and this is the most interesting thing. And so it's very hard to see this idea of textbooks and Freire's point,
and put Freire there. And it's interesting because if you think about all the techniques that we learn in a, for example, a CELTA course or a teacher training course, a TESOL training course, and you see like elicit answer from students, don't tell them, just get what they, and this is super Paulo Freire, this is Paulo Freire roots, but it stops when it comes to the course books. Because the idea of the students not being an empty a bank account where you deposit the knowledge, the idea is there in ELT from the basis.
Learner-centered approach.
Yeah, exactly. Like eliciting and making them talk in pairs, and then needs analysis to see what they need. But then we do the needs analysis to focus the curriculum around the learner's needs, and then we get this needs analysis and we find a course book for it.
Yeah.
So that's when it stops, right? That's when it stops.
And I think it's in the chat from a little bit earlier on actually, but I think it's come around to be relevant again now, where Isabella has written about using biased course books as opportunities to raise students' awareness. And I was just thinking about when you were talking about that, like why are we using sort of textbooks in sort of tension with Freire? Well, you know, that idea of, okay, opening the book, what's wrong with this page? What's missing? What would you add? Okay, there are some pictures here. Do you want to change them? Here's a pile of magazines. Look through them. Find pictures that you would rather put here instead. Change the page. Do you like the title? Have them actually reconstruct their own course book page before they do the activities. You know, and really therefore engage, and they got some ownership over that as well.
And Chris, I've been trying to do this at the teacher training level, okay, at the university, bringing textbooks and thinking with the teachers, because my students are teachers or future teachers, to rethink how they would work with this in a different way, in a critical way, with the things they have nowadays, okay? So this is your textbook, you have to work with this book because you're
because you have to.
You just have to. So what could be done, okay, that with this book, and I think this is very important to do, to say, think about this, what could be done, what could you, how could you get closer to the students? Okay. How could you prepare a project? For example, Paulo Freire, this idea of active methodology that people are talking a lot, this comes from Freire. So what about projects? How could you prepare a project from this? Instead of just having the same thing, the same old thing, the same old stories. So what could be done in a different way?
And I think your key point there is, as the Spanish says, about cambiar el chip, no? And that idea that you can do something different with the book. You haven't just got to go from the first page to the last page, from the top to the bottom, from the left to the right. You can do things with it, and it's the habit of mind of when this all began for me, when 2017, I think, and now my habit of mind is so trained that I can't open a book without something jumping out at me, going, "Oof, that would have been so good if." And it's almost become a parlor trick that someone will hand me a book off of the shelf, and I can just turn the pages and go there you go. There. But training the students to do that, you can. But I see your point about it. It is anti sort of Freirean to be using a course book in the first place. But when we're in a situation where we don't have the liberty to just chuck it in the bin, we can actually train them to be Freirean and be critical thinkers. And okay, so what's missing from this page? How could we change it? What would make this book better?
Yeah, and when we get this type of teaching, because I think teaching according to Paulo Freire is not just a way, just a technique, it's just a way that you see education, you see teaching. And the thing is, when we manage to do that, to raise our learners' awareness of what's missing, what's not there, what is the side that this text is showing, what's the bias behind?
And there's a decision. There's a decision behind that.
Yeah, there's a decision
it's not random.
Of this picture. Exactly. Somebody put this picture of this family. What do you think it's behind this?
Yes.
And then we come back to Freire when we do that, because then what we are doing there, we are training learners to spot these problems outside the classroom. And this switch that we touch is not a switch, it's actually something that we put in or we remove. Maybe I think I like to think of the idea of the veil that we managed to remove, and you see it everywhere. And I find it fantastic. I saw it it was an internet meme, but I think it was so spot on. That's the problem. It's not that you don't see that you're seeing justice in everything, because many people say, but now everything is politically incorrect. We see racism in everywhere. The problem is not seeing racism, is misogyny and homophobia everywhere. The problem is not seeing it anywhere. When we don't see it everywhere, that's the problem.
That's nice.
So it's not that I'm seeing racism everywhere. That's not a problem. The problem is when you don't see racism everywhere, because it is everywhere.
Because you haven't noticed.
And what we do when we raise this awareness of how we can spot this in the course book, they take that outside. And then we have education as a tool for social change, because then we are empowering our students to spot injustice, racism, misogyny, and all homophobia, and all these oppressive behaviors that we have.
Absolutely.
There are very nice comments and questions to you on the chat, but I think you have answered a few already. Leonardo was saying, are there any course books and English materials using critical and or cultural and or progressive approaches? I think you have answered that already. And Isabella has made a very interesting comment. If you want to comment on any of those, yes. And then I have another question to you guys. Do we still need books? Do we still need course books?
Well, I would say we don't need, as I told you in the beginning, I used to work without course books, okay? So I have already worked in several situations that I didn't have a course book, a textbook. But also, when I discuss with my students who are teachers or future teachers, usually they say, well, it's comfortable to have something to begin with, okay? So, and when they are starting to work and so on, it's not so easy because they work, at least in the Brazil situation, sometimes they work in 6, 7 institutions, okay, to have the salary, a good salary. So they say, I have to work a lot and I have to go from place to place. And the books, in a way, they help. If we have to start everything in the, from the beginning, it's harder. But I think that what you do with the book is the big difference. Okay, so we start talking about this. Of course, we can't teach without books. And I think it's, if you think about Paulo Freire, would be the best, okay? Because you start from the learners and you develop from the learners. So it's from that. But if you think about the situation, we have several different situations. And if you talk about the teachers and the situation of teachers, then we have to rethink this as well. It's not a simple answer like this.
Yeah, because the course books give us a backbone to rely on, and so it saves time. And this nagging that I feel when we talk about, okay, course books are like this, so we teachers should adapt them. And this nagging, I have mixed feelings with that. And this started with when James said, okay, yeah, but it's all on the shoulders of the teacher. So the publisher have no responsibility over that. And there should have. I mean, we teachers, we go after teacher training courses. We adapt this course book. We do a lot already. I mean, we do have to pressure the industry to make these changes, to make our life easier as well. So we can teach critically. We can teach according to Paulo Freire thoughts. We can teach the education that is libertarian in a way that is a little bit easier, because sometimes it takes a lot. I mean, we do need to pressure also the industry itself to start making these changes, because the industry needs to make money. But we are also clients of the publishers. We're not only teachers, right? And only teachers is being a lot already. But we are clients, so we can demand change. Say, no, I'm not going to use this course book. I want that course book.
And this is especially why. And here's my reason.
Exactly. Especially if we have like higher positions in schools and institutions like DOS, or we have a school, we have this power to change that. And pressure the industry to change as well, because changes have to come from the base up, but also they have to go into the higher hierarchy of the industries.
It's interesting that the question, do we still need to? I've come on a bit of an interesting journey about textbooks since I started teaching, because in the high school system in England and Wales, when I first started teaching in 2010, we didn't use textbooks. And well, as Janaina was saying, it's very difficult as a novice teacher to be working from a very, well, what was in my first position, a very bare bones structure, curriculum, and sort of inventing everything, the wheel on a daily basis. And I was so jealous of the science teachers, right? Because they had textbooks in science and in maths, and I was creating everything from scratch. And then I came into ELT, and oh my goodness, all these books. Oh, I can relax. And then I realized that I couldn't relax, because I opened the books and was like, oh my God. Now I've got a different headache instead. And I now find myself where I work, we use textbooks with exam preparation students, but not with kids, and not with business, and not with other kind of bespoke situations. And we do our curriculum and our syllabus. We have a syllabus for the kids that basically says week by week the things we'd like the teachers to be covering, but we don't sort of dictate activities and books and pages. We have lots of stuff to support, but you don't have to follow a particular pattern. And I think it's still obviously top down in that I've written these syllabi and said, hey, by Christmas I want you to have done these topics with your learners, but without that sort of, but to give them the structure that I was lacking when I first started teaching. The 6-week introduction to Shakespeare for year 7, 4 hours a week, was 6 lines long, 1 line for each week, and I had just started teaching. It was ridiculous. But on the other hand, it's not, here's a textbook where if you have a critical conscience, you're sort of wincing at each page. So I think I come on a bit of an interesting journey with them of craving them and then finding them a headache and then now using them in bespoke or in certain situations only.
Someone wrote in the chat that most Brazilian public schools teachers are allowed to build up their own material. And I have to disagree because I don't think that most Brazilian public schools teach. It depends on the kind of the level of the schools, because we still have PNLD, which is Programa Nacional. It's a program, a national program of textbooks in Brazil. And in some schools, some public schools, depending on the kind of public schools, teachers have to work with textbooks. And in some schools, the textbooks are not textbooks for schools, which is something very problematic. They use textbooks that would be for language institutes, for language schools, in the school, inside the school. Okay, so which is problematic as well. So I have worked with the PNLD, the National Program for Textbooks. I think it's a very interesting program because all these things that we are discussing, they have to be there.
Still.
No, it was because not now, not in this government. Okay, yeah. I was in the past. Okay, and now this government, they are trying to cut the program. Okay, but the program is very interesting, but not all schools. So we have nowadays in Brazil, it's different. Okay, so teachers, some teachers may design in some areas, but in other areas you have to use some textbooks, and some of the textbooks are not very appropriate to our reality. Okay. I completely agree that teachers should design the curriculum, but it's still.
Yeah, that's a long way ahead still.
Yes.
It's still and
that's about time and training as well, though, isn't it? Because that was the thing. I wasn't trained to produce a 6-week unit of work on Introduction to Shakespeare for 11-year-olds, and I certainly didn't have the time to do it. Not paid time, not time in work. And I think if we need to. That's also part of it, time and training.
Yeah, and I think these type of sessions, so far, if I'm not mistaken, at Celta Court, for example, there is 1 or 2 sessions that touch very lightly these type of issues. One of them is, I think, is World Englishes, but it's more like linguistic prejudice than representation and critical teaching, which is okay, which is necessary. I'm not diminishing that, but there is a lot of space for improvement in standard teaching training courses to raise teachers' awareness of how necessary it is for us teachers also to tackle that. So again, the teacher has to do that, design the curriculum and think about all the needs of the students as a student, as a social being, as a political being, but also it has to come from the top. From publishers, from teacher trainers, from the schools. It has to come from both sides. Otherwise, it's just too hard for just us doing that. We need allies.
I think that we should work with this, like situations like this training session, this conversation, this panel here. So teachers associations and universities and publishers should listen more to teachers and and all the other
teacher educators,
educators and so on. And maybe if they could not just hear, but they listen carefully what is happening, because the changes are there and they are not changing that much. So maybe we could have something different. I don't know. That's it.
Now, you 3 experts, you live and work in different scenarios. How is your work, I would like to ask each one of you, how is your work, personally speaking, related to Freire's thoughts or Freire's methodology?
This is
How do you
very
apply
complex.
that?
I don't want to
Not
sound
only-
ungrateful to a country that has taken me into so willingly and so great, but I here teach the course book people. That's the point. You know, those people that we find in course books that are tall, white, thin. I teach them. They have houses with 3 kids and
the car in the garage.
Yeah, the car too. Sometimes it's an Audi, a BMW, because just around the corner of my house, I have the BMW museum because that's where they produce their cars. On the other hand, these people, the people that I teach have wide access to critical education as well. So I've never faced, although they don't need, quote unquote, this, because they are well represented, and they still, my students still want to have this, because this is how their education was, because Paulo Freire is widely celebrated here in Germany, so around the world. Just the crusade against him, it's very punctual. But so it's my daily work, really. It's more like this type of talk that I have with the students, and it's kind of easy because I mean, they are trained already to do that, although they are more in the side of the oppressor, physically speaking, and economically speaking. Politically speaking, they are on the another side. So it's very, very complex, I would say, very complex for me.
Well, I work in a very different situation from, well, for about 30 years, I was working in a situation very similar, okay, because I worked at 2 big language centers in Brazil, and basically my students were white male and female, but white, from the, how to say, high level society, or high society with some money. They were very expensive courses. But then I started working at a university, at a public university, and my university tries at least to include people from different social backgrounds. So nowadays, where I work, and I've been working for more than 20 years at WERJ, I work with diversity, okay? But in the beginning, most of the teachers, the university teachers, they were white as well, okay? And nowadays, we see people, the change, this is another change of more people coming from schools, for example, at master degree and doctor degree. For the master degree, for the doctor degree, we have more and more teachers, people who are not just researchers, but they are teachers. And they are teachers who want to go on being teachers, but they want to study their classes. So I think this is very powerful, this is very interesting. So nowadays I could say that my students, they are not just one, I can't describe as only one profile. I have different profiles, and I'm very happy with this. And the research as well, the research are very interesting. We have things like, you were talking about global English, we are talking about prejudice in relation to English, this kind of prejudice in relation to the English you speak. We have people talking about favelados as slums, and why people from slums can't learn English. We have people talking about the power that we have with technology, and we can use this power to express ourselves and to do other things. But at the same time, the schools is infopoverty, so poor with poor technology. We don't have. So how can you teach technology without technology? So what we have nowadays, and I'm very happy, okay, to receive those new teachers and future teachers, and who want more and more to discuss their realities. So I'm very happy nowadays, and I think this is one of the changes. and they are teachers. They will be, and some are from private institutions as well. The same institutions I work. I have a student now that he's dealing with phonetics and phonology, and he's from the same institution that I work, but he wants something different. He wants to do something different. So I'm very happy with this.
Yeah, you can develop a lot, right, with this profile that you have in your classroom.
Yeah.
And you, Chris?
So, me.
And you.
Yes. No, I was just listening to you two talking and thinking, well, Patricia had said that we have three very different contexts where we teach, and yes, those two very much differently, and then mine as well, because I'm in a language academy, so we have all sorts of clientele, all sorts of students coming to us for all sorts of different reasons, from a reasonable range of social classes as well. We have some really quite poor students in terms of the local context, and immigrant students, even to sort of immigrant students to Spain, who Spanish is the second language, and then they're coming along and actually learning English as a third or fourth language. So we certainly have an interesting range in terms of who we work with, and then how Freire is informing sort of what I do in my practice. I think it's what I was alluding to in my talk earlier, which is, as much as possible, making room for the student, and what Janaina was saying, and Molila as well, but that finding the space in a dictated curriculum, even if the curriculum has been written by me, finding the it's an awkward tension. It's a very awkward tension. Yeah, finding the spaces within a necessary curriculum, if we can call it that, or required a curriculum for the negotiation, for the what the students want to talk about, what I would like the students to talk about, and some of that was built into the sort of the redesign and the revision that we've done. Okay, so it's imposed, but we're also imposing space. We're also imposing these other topics, these other discussions, these sort of wider issues that the materials that are in the library maybe don't cover, but that students would want to discuss, and trying to, as much as possible, hear our students. And we spend a lot of time, actually, I spend a lot of time going through feedback, and you can only get so far with feedback, of course, but at least it's trying to get information from the students to inform our practice, inform our teaching. I hope that answers the question, Patricia.
Yes, you have. We are almost running out of time. I would like to open out to other participants. Any questions to our three experts? Anyone? There have been many comments, many compliments. They are in the chat also. But anyone here participating with us would like to open a microphone and ask a question? Would anyone? Don't feel shy, guys, right? Anyone?
I have a question, please.
Great.
Go on.
From Ilá, nice to meet you. I don't know you yet. I know James a lot. And hello Janaina, and hello Chris. Just a quick question. What do you think the publishers can do to improve this inclusion? What can they do? Just that. Nice to see you guys, and this is my question.
Thank you. That was a nice question.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of a list of things that we could do, but I think.
I wonder if we start with listen, which is ironic. Exactly. I just interrupted Ilá, but
no, that's cool.
but I was
fine.
thinking, I can think of a list, but listen, as you were saying even earlier on, Ilá, like, listen to us.
Yeah, listen to those who are claiming
Tyson,
to be there.
I wasn't quoting Tyson from the chat, but he's just written the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Listen to those who are not there.
Yeah,
exactly. And who want to be there and think that deserve to be there, and that's definitely what Tyson has just said. Listen to the marginalized folks.
Yeah.
Do what they suggest.
Yeah.
Listen and listen
to teachers and teacher educators and to students.
Teachers, listen to everybody, but listen paying attention to, because usually what they do is they try research, like asking questions about things that they know the answer. So if you know the answer, it isn't the right thing, okay? So I think that they have to be a little bit more open to listen and accept sometimes the different ideas.
Okay, any other questions, anyone?
Maybe in the chat?
There is actually one that I thought was interesting. Was it Leonardo? And I apologize for my...
Yeah, I saw like this one. How could we relate Freire's work and his studies to the anti-racist education perspective? That's very interesting. That's very interesting. If I may start, I would say that when we teach in developing critical consciousness, we raise awareness of racism, of misogyny, of all these problems, the homophobia, all these things that we have in society. And then making this, using this conscious awareness to go, to have like a plan on how to act, not only inside, but outside the classroom, to become an anti-racist. I think this is a good start, but I would love to hear Janaina and Chris about this.
Go first.
In fact, during the BRAZ-TESOL, I gave some ideas on how to work with this. But what I would say is that try to bring what is happening, because lots of things are happening and problems that we are facing of racism. And then in Brazil, we had this week a guy from Congo who was killed. And I think that try to bring the topic, bring what is happening discussion to the classroom. It's not difficult to find, okay, the problems that we are facing. And then in Brazil, we are facing lots of different kinds of racism problems right now. So I believe that at least bring the thing to the classroom, discuss. You can give the news, you can bring a picture, you can, anything that you do that try to substitute some from, as we are talking about textbook people who work just with textbook. So substitute a text, okay, from the text that you have to teach, but think about another text, that this text could help you give this class. It's not to bring something more, but you can work what you have to work if you are working with a language topic or functional topic, something that you are dealing, but try to bring the topic into the classroom.
Yeah, bring that reality in. And I think what Ela said earlier on about seeing it everywhere and raising the critical awareness and teaching us to see it, teaching students to see it in textbooks in the classroom, and then that being transferred into the real world, I think is really it's a really key point for this question as well. And the question and that point earlier on made me think of how often if you're not in a minoritized position, minoritized rather minority, right? So minoritized position, then you may not see or be aware of something, and therefore act or speak in a way that reinforces that status quo, reinforces that oppression, without really realizing it, without really being aware. And the conversations I've had, particularly around homophobia and LGBTQ issues, and thought, I had no idea. Okay, thank you. Now I know. And so that kind of, I think that works in all of these topics, that actually teaching the critical awareness, teaching the critical consciousness, sorry, teaching the awareness, teaching people to spot things, people to understand, and as I said, listen to marginalized folks. That, because I hazard that most people don't want to be racist or homophobic or misogynistic, but maybe aren't aware of what they're doing, what their habits are, how they're behaving, and how that comes across. And actually having the veil, as Ela said earlier on, lifted a little bit might help.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So then, on behalf of everyone involved in this event, I would like to thank Chris, Janaina, and Ilá.
Thank you for the invitation.
For having us, the invitation.
I'd like to thank for this moment. It was very nice to meet Ilá Coimbra.
Yeah, we met once long time ago, just
Yeah.
in an event that you were
Yes.
a planner, but I wasn't there. I helped organize. I wasn't there. It's nice to see you, and I really admire your work and your. Really, it's an honor to be sharing this panel with you too. Yeah.
So thank
I'm very
you
happy
very
to be
much.
here.
Yes,
Thank you very
Yes.
much for the invitation. Thank you very much for
Absolutely.
the
I have to
invitation.
thank you, right? You're very busy. I know you're very busy professionals. And yes,
you.
being here with us is an honor, right? Have you with
Never.
us.
We're
Honor
never
is
busy enough
mine
to talk
and
about
the
these
pleasure.
issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then everyone here, you're all invited to come back tomorrow for a little bit more. Okay?
Yeah. Tomorrow I'll be here as well.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.